A very warm welcome to you all. Today, we're going to share with you some information on our new leadership development solution, Navigating Leadership with Connections, which is centered around the importance of connections with employees. Introduction, first of all, for myself, Ed Shaxfield. I'm a senior principal consultant, as you can see, for the UK and Ireland L&D team. I'm going to be looking after you today, and if you have registered for this particular webinar, you automatically get enrolled in the you get to. So you'll be coming to see me again tomorrow, where we'll sort of finish off because I've got so much to talk about. My background, predominantly financial services. I was in the Royal Navy as a weather forecaster before going into leadership development. Don't ask me for a weather forecast before I got into leadership development, and I've worked for two global consultancies since. You're absolutely right. I started work when I was 14 years old. I say that every time. Look, a lot has been written about today's ever-evolving workplace. And we know that actually effective leadership is essential for fostering a positive and productive working environment. But we think post-pandemic, what does effective leadership really mean now? McKinsey's written a little bit about this recently, and what they have suggesting, and I would of course endorse it, so I'm talking about it now, is what is required is really a new approach, new thinking around leadership. And whether it's a new approach, I think it's always been true, but a re-emphasis on things that are really important. And this means moving away from more sort of task-based transactional interactions towards a deeper, more meaningful set of connections. And this really emphasizes the importance of taking time to truly understand each other on a personal level, sharing common values, beliefs, your hopes, your fears, and therefore, by doing that, creating that environment where individuals can reveal their real true potential. Easy to say, but what makes that difficult for leaders? I pose as an open question. Well, we are all wired clearly for self-protectionism and survival. And I think, I worked in the L&D field for 2 decades now. This style of leadership can feel quite uncomfortable for people. And produce these sort of fear-based reactions that send people right back to their old sort of more transactional and more directive habits because they want to feel more certain about things. So when we need adaptability, and it's really, really important, we actually feel that we can't adapt. But really, all the research points to, look, if we want to unleash the full human potential in organizational leaders, then we have to create environments where belonging and trust are there, and develop compassionate relationships with our people. Let's talk more. Yeah, Amanda, thank you for that. And comments through, they're not just for me; they're for everyone on the here. So having that dialogue is really, really important, and the vulnerable comes up quite a lot. And if we think about this communications piece, Gartner's top HR priorities for 2024, if you haven't read it, and you please have a look at that, some really interesting stuff in there. And other research as well revealed that leaders are really struggling right now to connect with their employees in a meaningful way. Our new leadership development solution, which of course is the subject of you coming today to get a flavour of what we're about and what we're thinking around this, provides real strategies for leaders to address the barriers to building meaningful connections with their people. This is the first of 2, as I've said before. And in today's session, we're going to look at 2 out of 5 of the series, which are meaningful performance conversations and being mindful of imposter syndrome. What has emerged since the pandemic, and a lot of you will be well aware of this, and it's become really front and center for 2024, these 3 themes under the human-centered leadership banner: approach of caring, of connection, and coaching. And in order to inform those 3, we're talking about a program approach of 5 central sessions supported by psychometric and accountability peer coaching sessions. Let me show you what that looks like. There we go. In the main programme, we're proposing to cover these topics: empathetic leadership, mindful of imposter syndrome, which I'm going to speak to today, building trust with hybrid teams, building belonging, and having meaningful performance conversations. Why these then, Ed? I hear you say. Well, what does the research tell us? And let me just chip through these and show how crucial they are that we attend to these if we're going to have this human-centered, the 3 Cs of caring, connection, and coaching. November 2023, Harvard Business Review published an article citing that empathy was absolutely crucial to building trust and for supporting mental health in the workplace. I know that's something that's really become, again, front and center in people's minds at the moment as well. But actually, research shows about 50% of employees say their leaders actually practice empathy, the rest don't. And there's a big gap between what leaders perceive themselves as being empathetic and the employee's experience of that. So what leaders, if you press them, could define what empathy is, the practical application of it is somewhat lacking. So this real understanding of how I demonstrate empathy, and clearly that's what we'll attend to on the program, is missing there. It's a great development opportunity for us, and it's absolutely crucial in leadership. Employees are saying they want empathetic leaders. And our Gen Z, in fact, interesting, I was doing an intergenerational leadership webinar a few months ago. It was really fascinating. Gen Z is saying, yeah, and Fiona, that one, they sympathy and empathy and the difference between the two of those is really, really crucial to sort of to differentiate between the Brené Brown video is just absolutely seen, it's just perfection. Have a look at that on YouTube. Gen Z, 83%. 83% of Gen Z workforce expressed a willingness to change jobs for a better, more compassionate workplace. So vast majority, that's what they're looking for. And of course, in the battle for talent, we've got to pay attention to this. And what about imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is found to be one of the #1 performance debilitator at work. Nearly 62% of knowledge workers experience imposter syndrome, contributing to a lack of confidence, fear of failure, burnout, all prevalent amongst organizations. And I'll probably say it again, it's one that last year started doing more and more sessions on imposter syndrome. Hybrid, of course, trust within hybrid model is absolutely endemic. Gartner study here is finding that actually there's a mutual mistrust between leaders and employees, with actually 63% of organizations saying they actually trust their employees, and half the employees saying they don't trust their organization in return. Where does AI come into this? Well, I might mention that later on. Is there a big opportunity here to really unlock that full power and really turbocharge remote and hybrid working? We might touch about that later on. And belonging. In fact, I was talking about belonging only yesterday with when we were talking about hybrid, and we're talking about high performance teams as well. We know at LHH the importance of belonging from our studies last year on team effectiveness and the solution that came out of that. And Gartner affirmed that actually cultural success with an organization is based on alignment and connectedness. Alignment, people know the culture, they believe in it and demonstrate the behaviors of that culture, but they've also got to feel that they belong within it. We all know that actually people are going to, the word is always discretionary effort, isn't it? But people are really going to get involved and going to perform at their best if they feel like, actually, do I have a place here or not? Yes, I do. Traditionally, people connected through that physical proximity. If we hark back to the hybrid bit, but actually people are now looking to connect through this emotional proximity, and that's mentioned very much within that Gartner 2024 report. And finally, meaningful performance conversations. I've got a quote here which I like, so I'm going to use it. We're in the midst of, and this was from McKinsey, we're in the midst of a profound shift in how work gets done. One that asks leaders to go beyond being controllers with a mindset of certainty to becoming coaches who operate with a mindset of discovery, fostering continual rapid exploration, execution, and learning to find out what employees really want. Again, say grounded in the research, Gartner studies pointing out actually less than 1 in 3 employees know how to progress their career within the next 5 years. Leaders struggling with the competing demands of that's a compassion, that's a move from empathy to actually doing some stuff here, compassion and results. But it is possible to achieve both through really good, meaningful performance conversations, and we'll pick up on that. That's the flow all the way through, and we're sort of proposing a psychometric at the moment. We like strength scope. It's a very positive, focused psychometric, and the peer accountability sessions is about getting one's voices in the room. What have they been working on? What have they learned? What are they finding easy, and what are they not finding so easy? And to share that with their peer group on that program. Let's start then, and I want to talk really about. I'm going to talk about more practical elements of this first of all. So we're actually going to start with coaching, and then we'll have a look at caring towards the end of this webinar. So meaningful performance conversations. Clearly, we're not going to be, and this is sort of some of the learning outcomes that we propose to have within a sort of a half day, 3.5 hour session. I clearly haven't got time to go through all of this today, but it gives you sort of a flavour of some of our intention around the learning outcomes on the main program. The what, but crucially, how to have these meaningful conversations. So there's commitment, there's motivation, and there's absolutely some engagement here. Really keen to bring you into the conversation here. We're going to do a little poll here. And why? Because it's supposed to be a taster. So I'm supposed to be showing you the sort of things that, how we get that conversation going with our participants. So there's a little poll here. Amida's just going to launch that for me here. How confident are you that your performance conversations are meaningful to your particular team member? Yeah, reasonably confident seeing the, possibly the knowledge level of the individuals dialing in. I facilitate a lot, and the feedback I tend to get is, I need some frameworks. I need some help with this to make sure that I really am, connecting with people and making sure that these are, one of the things that my participants say to me is, yeah, I always used to think you just got in there and sort of downloaded. This is a conversation. That's what's most important there. Okay, thank you. We'll end the poll there. And let's just share the results. So reasonably confident, actually. Pretty good. Can you see that all okay? Can I have a yes from somebody out there on the... Yeah, fantastic. Thumbs up. Thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, so pretty good. And that's really where we start the conversation with people when we're doing this sort of program. In its full volume. I think as a leader, what is your perspective on people is something that we need to pose with our people. I think the mindset, our own leadership mindset is really important here. We'll talk more about on the program about a strength-based approach to our performance management. Actually, let's work with where their strengths are as well. It's not just about the work-ons, but can we leverage some of those unique strengths this individual has so we're setting them up for success. As a seasoned leader, and maybe many of you joining today are, I know that this can be difficult, but we ask the people to consider this. You can see your people as a problem, or you can see them as a person that's got a problem. Or clearly the one that I much prefer is that you can have a view here that they are a source of enormous potential. And if you come at them with that attitude or that approach, that's going to set things up for a much more meaningful dialogue between the two of you. Understanding your own role. We'll look at this in more detail on the main program, backed up by stats, and emphasize how important you are to that earlier slide in this equation. But yes, they do have to meet you halfway to have that dialogue, to have that relationship. But this is really interesting, and I was discussing this yesterday with some participants. That Gallup contended that line managers, leaders, even if they just delivered negative feedback repeatedly, so the individuals that are the recipients of those are still 20 times more likely to be engaged than getting absolutely none whatsoever. So even if you just have that dialogue with them, and even if you're just doing developmental feedback with them, you're still going to be able to shift the dial and get some engagement there. So it was really interesting. That's probably enough for me for the time being. What about you then? What do meaningful performance conversations look like for you? Fingers on the keyboard. Let's see some of your thinking around what's a meaningful performance conversation. That's what the essay question is. So what's your view on making things really meaningful in those conversations? Yeah, Louise, thank you so much. Two-sided dialogue here, and I always used to think when I first years in management, I'd just sit them down, just tell them, just show more listening than talking, feeling heard. Yeah, heard and understood. Who was it that said that? Was it Carl Rogers? People want heard and understood, but not necessarily agreed with. Finding out what do they want here. Both parties leave the meeting feeling confident and understand what's gone well, what they need to each do. Concrete examples, honest feedback, this two-way flows coming out here, discussing how individuals can really reach their full potential. Feedback from broader stakeholders as well, not just from yourself. So there's some stuff here about listening, balance, two-way, really being clear, some real clarity here as well. Yeah, also to me, and I have had some surprises in some of my performance conversations. You're like, oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, well, I didn't want to demotivate you. Well, I'm demotivated now. I know. Relevant and timely, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. Thank you. Some really great comments here about the balance and facilitation, ownership for the reviewee of the process. Let me just move on to one of the slides that we like to use here. These are sort of things that we see as important. Yes, it's a dynamic conversation. It's got a couple more coming in here. Knowledge, skills, and attitude, abilities, strengths, and development gaps. Julianne really liked that. What was I saying? Look, it's not a download. It's a conversation. We want them to bring into it what is meaningful for them. Yes, both need to be vested. Yes, it needs to be aligned towards the sort of the vision, mission, goals, and so on. But I think this term curious from the leader's point of view is really important. It's very hard to be defensive and unproductive in your conversations if you come in with this. I'm really curious to understand your point of view around this, because actually it's their life, it's their career. So getting them to like, talk to me. What is it that you're seeing? What would you like to do? Respectful conversation, new insights, new ways forward, but generating always responsibility. I think in the employee, in the people there to take things forward and build that awareness. On the main program again, as we'll provide a framework which people like that. That's what people tell us. Something can hang my hat on. Give me something here. I'll give you a flavour of the framework here. It looks very tiring, doesn't it? Any meaningful performance conversation requires some planning and preparation on both sides if it's going to be meaningful. You do your side of stuff. Me as a boss, of course, I'll go and find out, as was mentioned there, from stakeholders and so on. But it does require the leader to have a thought-out plan of how that's going to go in that room, concrete examples that they've got from other people as well. And these powerful conversations, of course, are going to range from stuff that is really, really positive to the even better, the developmental stuff. But you need, of course, you can't be over prepared. You need to be agile, able to stay in that conversation in the room and create that successful dialogue, generating those meaningful insights. But we do find that actually these elements of intent, asking, as you told me, not telling, listening actively, providing relevant, useful feedback. I'll say more about that in a moment. And then, okay, what next? Okay, so what are the actions based on this? Isn't just a chummy chat. What it could be chummy, but what are we going to do as a result of it? So these we feel can really enable those conversations. No, I'm not going to talk about all of them, of course, but being clear on your goal, on your intent. What's the goal of the conversation? What do we want to actually get out of this? And what do you really want them to think, feel, and do? And let's be honest, meaningful conversations are only truly meaningful when it cooperates and where possible, really, as I've said before, aligns with the individual's aspirations and goals, giving them that personal sense of investment and ownership. We like the do and think. I think most of us get that when we have a performance conversation. This is what I want them to do. This is how I want them to think. But we can sometimes neglect that feel part. A feel is such a powerful element. We can't afford really to not consider it. We are human and we're driven by emotions. So if we can think about how, okay, my intent and goal in this conversation, if I can tie this into what motivates them and really connect to their motivation, that's going to be really meaningful for them. One I always like, anyway, sitting out even outside of a performance management conversation about, where are we in our leadership here? I've been facilitating for a long time, talking about leadership development. Often, well, when I step into that leadership role, aren't I there? I'm there to tell people what to do. So, well, there is a time for giving your solution, and interesting to sort of get your own view on this. Really, when our team member faces a challenge, where do we go? It's so instinctive. I've got to tell them, and that tends to be often for a lot of us the default approach. I read somewhere, and I was looking for it again, I just couldn't find it, but I read somewhere that really resonated with me once, and they said leaders are defined by the questions they ask, not necessarily the answers they provide. We're talking about, clearly when there is an answer required, it's not about being obtuse about this, but actually asking those really great thought-provoking questions and empower them to find that solution, Julianne. Yeah. So, and this really just speaks to a coaching culture, doesn't it? Cornerstones of responsibility and self-awareness around coaching. Only doing, they're constantly feeding these individuals information. They're going to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And it's almost as like being almost a thinking partner. If people are able to engage with that, well, you ask them. So you can say, well, okay, Manal, is it possible to give an example of a question? So, well, how do you think you might go about that? And in fact, I was talking to my boss the other day, and I said, "Oh, have you got any direction for me on how we could handle this client in 2024?" And he said, "Oh, well, actually, I'm going to throw that question back to you. What do you think you should be doing in 2024 with that?" And I thought, "Oh, that's really good." And then I went in there. So really, it's about asking them some open questions, and of course, reflecting and paraphrasing and enabling them to sort out their own thinking in their own mind about that subject. Yes, you can tell them, but where are they at in their own mind? My old boss was really good at this. He always used to get in the room and you start talking and you just go, so this is what's going on at the moment. Ed, what's your view on it? And I go, what? What's your view? And I just go, well, I don't know. Well, you don't know? I was like, oh, well, I hadn't really thought about it. And what he was trying to do is provoke some thinking in me and asking me to start interrogating the world of work that I was in and having a view. He said, Ed, you're paid to have a view. I'd really like you to have a view. I thought that's simple, but really, really powerful. Oh, feedback. Yes, of course. Feedback's really, really helpful here. What people are doing well, what they should and what they should continue doing, and where there's areas for improvement. and understanding that sort of gap and what needs to be put into that gap for people to achieve that. But it's the big but. My experience, and I'm sure it's for those dialing in as well, is people will only act on feedback if they are willing to accept it from you. Do they believe that you have a positive intent towards them? And I always like to tell my story here about the granny's jumper. So imagine we've just had Christmas, you're all sitting round, and you're there with your dear gran, and your gran offers you a present, and you open it up and you take it out, and it's a sort of itchy, woolly knitted jumper, and you sort of put it on. It's a bit tight round the neck, manage to squeeze it on. One arm's longer than the other. It's a bit cropped at the bottom, showing sort of, for me, copious amounts of stomach. And I always ask my participants, what do you do at that point? You say, well, of course you say, thank you very much, Gran. It's lovely. Thank you so much. And you accept that. Slightly clumsy. It might not quite fit. It might not be quite right. But the intent is positive. It's from a position here of love, of course. You accept it. And that there is a parallel here, I think, around feedback. You're more likely to accept feedback if you believe the other person has a positive intent towards you. And that all comes to building good relationships with your people. Otherwise, people just go, thanks very much for that. Yeah, okay, fine. But in the back of their mind, well, I'm not sure I really trust this individual, so I think I'm going to park it in my mind. And research tends to show that people also, and this will link into my next point here, don't tend to accept feedback because they perceive it's unfair in some way, hasn't been delivered well. It's clumsy. We find this model really, really useful around this, and it's called the CBID model. You've either come across other ones. There's a few out there. BOCA, behavior, outcome, consequence, action is another one. But I really, really like this, and I'll explain why. So this reduces the sort of these little snurglies around feedback. Yeah, absolutely. If it's not the intent, it's not feedback, it's agenda-led. I really like that, Vanessa. So the idea is you provide search all the situation, and it can keep that nice and short and punchy. So Tuesday's meeting. And of course, anyone, again, seasoned on here will know that around feedback, there's no point sort of... I remember years ago, my boss said, oh, Wed, yeah, bit of feedback, end of year. You cut off a client mid-sentence. I said, did I? Oh, well, when was this? He said, oh, well, I don't know, it was 18 months ago. I was like, yeah, well, it would have been helpful to know that a bit sooner. I might have been able to do something about that. So, of course, as close as you can, because, of course, performance conversations should be an ongoing piece of dialogue anyway. Keep that description nice and short and to the point, as I say. Behavior as specific as possible. That's really important. And only things that really are observable. Describing stuff in a tangible and factual way is absolutely crucial. It's critical that you're objective here. That point about being able to navigate this conundrum of feedback well, and being very specific. Avoiding things like subjective interpretation, or it seems like maybe you're feeling a bit sad or frustrated during that meeting. Individuals then tend to go into that sort of more energy about refuting your assumption instead of absorbing and learning from that feedback. So trying to keep that objective and factual. I think what is crucial that needs always is about what is the impact. Inevitably, as I'm talking here, you're probably always thinking about developmental, probably because I've slanted it that way. But this is really, really useful for bringing people on and telling them, actually, this is what you're doing that's really good. Can you do some more of it for me, please? Because it's so good. So, Bob, you came off yesterday really credible, made that client feel heard, understood, and really strengthened our relationship with the client as a result. So how did this behavior impact? Loops it nicely round. And I think that the piece that is really key for me is this discovery question at the end, coming back to them for their perspective. And it's not something on another model I used to use around the BOCA, which was more about an action thing. Here is about, okay, the type of question could be really important because you're engaging the individual in a discussion. We established that on your chat here on the webinar, that actually we're supposed to be having a discussion here. So what is their view? we tend to know that Y is quite accusatory. It tends to trigger our rational brain into defending the logic. So Y, people start to feel a little bit defensive. But if you can ask some great who, what, when, where, which, or how, you get much more of a rich answer there. So what led you to produce such a fantastic report? Can you unpack that for me? Because actually what you're doing is getting them to unpack it in their own mind as well. So there you go, CBID. We'll do more of that on the program. We'll do some sort of little scenarios and so on, get individuals to sort of craft their own there. So that's a sort of first part there. I'm just keeping a very close eye on the time. That's the first element there. And as I said before, we are just getting more and more requests around this mindfulness of imposter syndrome. This is an issue, and it has a real impact. It has an impact for the leadership cadre, but of course it has an impact because, of course, you are there to develop the next wave of people coming up in the organization to be leaders. And what's holding them back? Often, I couldn't do that. Could I do that? I can do that job. So spotting those symptoms on the team and calling this out and helping them to overcome those inevitable limiting beliefs. We all have them. I just love this stuff. Imposter syndrome. So some learning outcomes here that we'll deep dive into. Then just gives you again a flavour here. There's some really interesting reflections, and I think that self-reflection is really key around disrupting limiting beliefs and mindsets. We're dropping into these unhelpful mindsets that don't always serve us. Oh, I can do that. Oh, no. Is it an interesting one, isn't it? There's a bizarre statistic, and I don't know if I really believe it. I don't know if it's a bit of a Cosmo quiz that people say, the vast majority of people would rather die than make a speech in public. It's like, really? But there's so many limiting beliefs out there. And us as leaders, I'm sure many of you on the call today are leaders, pick up on this all the time and go, where's that come from? So we do talk about that. We talk about Albert Ellis's ABC model, about that sort of activating event. What's the belief around that, and what's the consequence? And then it goes into sort of how do we actively disrupt that and experiment with a new way of thinking there, and getting some of that out there. Well, definitions, of course, are really important to go into here as well. A social phenomenon rather than really a clinical entity, and it's the definitions sort of vary around imposter syndrome. Discovered in 1978 by Clance and Innes, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, and it was originally developed as a concept and defined essentially around this thing about an experience of intellectual and professional fraudulence, which most people, hence the fraud or phony, start nodding vigorously at that point. So people believe they're undeserving of the achievements and the high esteem to, in fact, they are held by others. They aren't as competent or as intelligent. Just don't tell anyone, as others might think. And soon enough, people are going to find out the truth about them. They're often really well accomplished as well. Might have high office and numerous academic degrees. I'll show you somebody in a moment that suffers from this. There's this persistent ability to believe that success is deserved. Just take a moment just to enjoy that success of that promotion and so on, and is legitimate for them around their own efforts and skills. We've got to really talk about this thing, and I'll get into a moment really about they don't feel confident or competent internally, really, regardless of what they achieve. That's just still not validating them, and therefore they don't feel the joy of all that success. At some point, I'm going to pick up the phone and someone says, "You are utter fraud, Ed," and your inadequacy is going to come to light. Clance and Innes originally defined imposter syndrome as a condition they observed because of where the original experiment came in 1978 in professional women. But hand up, of course, research shows that men and women equally suffer from imposter syndrome. And only anecdotal from when I've been facilitating programs myself. Absolutely, absolutely, it's on both sides. Interesting. We've been talking about performance conversations and this statistic. Actually, how could we not? How could we not talk about imposter syndrome as it's the number one performance debilitator at work, and really getting inside what's going on for people, and we'll talk a little bit in a moment about how do we actively disrupt this. We really want to get people, and these are sort of early stages in any program, really getting the people to really reflect and to really think about, okay, so because we've got to start disrupting thought patterns here that are unhelpful. And it really chimed with me. How can we inspire confidence if we don't have confidence in ourselves? And it reminded me of a boss I used to have who used to say, Ed, whatever you do as a leader, it's not about being pompous. It's not about anything like that, overconfidence. Just have something on your desk or in your wallet, doesn't matter what it is, that reminds you how good you are. I was like, what? So that reminds you how good you are. Because how can you ask other people to believe in you if you don't even really believe in yourself? Because that can leak out. And it really made me reminded me of him when I read that. Yeah, of course, self-doubt can be healthy, and we'll talk about reframing at the end here. But actually, people have earned their right to be, participants have earned their right to be at the table. They've been promoted, you've got to trust the process. It's time to speak now, and it's time to move forward. Really, really get them to reflect on this stuff. As I said before, confidence is really key. Confidence is really key to this. So we kind of wind that back, and we share that actually even somebody like dear Tom Hanks, who I think we'll agree has had a reasonable success as a actor, director, producer, writer, Oscar winner. He's done okay. He's got the right to sit there and go, you know what, I think I've done all right. But no. And I think it does make you feel a bit better that actually, I'd say somebody in inverted commas high office, no matter what we've done, there's someone's going to pick up the phone and say actually you've been found out. I haven't really heard from you in the chat for a moment there, but when is it always going on at all the time? That's my question really to you around imposter syndrome. Or when do you think the pinch points are when imposter syndrome suddenly starts to kick in? You want to throw something into the chat there. When do you feel it really starts to kick in? Yeah, new task in new situations. That resonates with what a new opportunity, workloads imbalance as well. I can't do this promotion. Oh, this feedback doesn't resonate. It's a lack of clarity, a lot of change. Yeah, when stretching out of comfort zone as well. Yeah. I was only asking that really because the sessions I run, people, what my participants say to me, which is the best intelligence, really, it's all very well reading articles and so on, but they overwhelm with tasks. But when people tend to be promoted, they really get it. They say it's like I've been promoted or I've won that job. So what? Well, that's really, really important as their bosses that we look out for signs of that, because we'll talk about the impact and some of the symptoms of that. As we go into this. So I noticed there's a couple of raised hands. There's opportunity for a little bit of a Q&A at the end. I'm not entirely sure I'm able to take people off mute as well. So apologies, I have seen those. So I should have said earlier. So it might be an opportunity to throw questions into the chat as we go. So where was I? Yeah, certainly for people feeling overwhelmed with tasks. So there is a role here for leaders to help. Yeah. So how does confidence work? I like this model. So let me just talk you through this. People are often told, aren't they? Just be more confident. Have more confidence in yourself. Come on. Buck up. Be more confident. Be like, "Ah, can't I can't do that. I need a bit more. But because it's so much more complex than that. We start with this sort of belief in ourselves. It starts with it inside our head. I believe I can do something, that I'm going to succeed. I am therefore through my body language, my tonality of my voice, and so on. I'm going to show that I can do this. Um, Others are going to notice that. Good, it's good. That was good. That was really good. I enjoyed that. Um, I'm going to tell you very confident. That was really well done. It's really self-assured. So it reinforces that. That feeds, of course, into a healthier mindset around certain areas. You go, actually, I am confident in this, and really, really helps. And there's this reinforcing cycle. It's probably appropriate at this point to mention that there are and some of you will have seen Amy Cuddy's TED talk as well, and some of you probably want to come and say, well, her research has been debunked, and then she debunked the debunkness. But there is some interesting. This is a fake it till you make it. So the idea is, of course, we can reverse this as well, so that if we physically, and this is what her contention was for her work, which has stood the test of time despite being attacked, that actually if we behave in a confident way, we can fool our mind into saying, oh, Ed's acting in a confident way. Head tells me I am now confident. Nevertheless, and you can have a look at Fake It Till You Make It. I'm sure many of you come across it before. It's a very popular TED talk. Our contention still is, can we actually also really look at cultivating genuine self-belief? It's so important, I think, that we do get across to our people. The speaker's name, hang on, I'll just put it in here. Amy Cuddy. Fake it until you make it. It's really worth a watch. It's quite interesting, Kelly. So thank you for your inquiry on that. It's really, really important that we make sure that participants really understand the impact that this has. That this isn't just a nice to have, that we're just talking about it because it's a bit of this can really, really impact people. And of course, we're all into fulfilling potential, having that best career, that best life, instead of being held back and ending up in the box, the mental box that you put yourself in. I can never do it, never stand up and give a talk. I can never do these things. I can never do that. So we do talk to them about that. That this can really make people start avoiding challenges and opportunities, not going for the relationships at work or school, or maybe I couldn't even talk to that senior person. Why not? They want you to talk to them, and that really has an impact on people's relationships and their performance there. Yes, yes, and I say it's equal there, but actually the effects can be have been seen to be worse for women and underrepresented groups. Really interesting. Now, little poll for you. Another little poll while you're enjoying your lunch. Most popular, and that does resonate with me. I thought, yeah, that's very true. Looking more at what you can't do than can do. Overrated view. Thank you, thank you. These are things that we'll talk to and explore with the participants there. So thank you very much for participating there. Do appreciate it. There we go. Hopefully that has been shared there. Just flick up a thumb. For this habit of thinking I've shared stuff, people are like, what are you talking about? Okay, so there you go. I'll just flick those up there. These are the sort of the fuller ones, and often a lot of them they're all sort of intertwined. Quite Yeah, Kelly, that's an interesting one there. You can see that on the chat about explaining away. People will think the candidate has been chosen because of manager bias, friends, long Teco workers long and they might have been working for a while, and you think, well, actually, does that rub off on the individual thinking, well, people think that, and then they internalize that? Quite an interesting perspective there. Uh, I think long term, sorry, long term, yeah, um, yeah, and people that's really interesting. Um, 7 types of imposter syndrome. I think you can do all of these. I said we won't go through all of this now, but I'm only going to talk to you. I'll talk about a couple here that really come up from say my time uh, facilitating programs around this, and I think the perfectionist is certainly something I hear a lot from uh, both men and women on programs that say, uh, uh, always hungry for more success, better outcomes, high prestige. I'm not satisfied no matter how hard I work. And it's a real problem. So perfectionism comes up a bit, but the other one that does shine through in our discussions was the expert as well. I've got to have all the credentials before I could even consider applying for a job, that job. So you're looking through LinkedIn or something, you're like, do that. Oh, I can't do that. Oh well, no, that's it then. Even if you think actually the organization might be quite open to you learning about that. So compulsive need to have all the knowledge, all the expertise, even for um thank you, appreciate that comment. And also not recognize that certainty and having all the answers isn't actually really expected. So there's always going to be a degree of, and we're all experiencing enormous amounts of change. So there's always going to be this element here around, okay, do I learn parts of this? I've got good learning agility, because that's really what it's about. You're never going to be a complete expert. And of course, as we always talk to our leaders about, use a team around you, leverage the knowledge you've got around you. You often got some fantastic team members who would like to feel like they belong, get engaged. So ask their view of the situation as well. So as I say, 7 different types there. That's all lovely, but what do we do about it? And that's a big piece of the content, really. How do you help people deal with this? Bouncing back from setbacks, not reinforcing imposter syndrome. This isn't a complete list. Like some of these, talking to them about actually, if you've gone for a promotion and you've got to kind of, or you've applied for a job, you've got to trust the process that your boss has put you forward because they see some great potential there. Looking at concrete examples where self-doubt is, go back to the stuff you've done that is really, really good. Going back to that. Making a list is something that Suzanne Eames talks about. And what they do is you get participants to go, write a list of things you're not good at, but actually write 2 other lists of stuff you're okay at, and actually the stuff that you're really, really good at. And then reflect and discuss that and look at, with a partner, look at all the stuff that you're really, really good at that can really, really help you here. Emma, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your time today. So we'll do practical application of, okay, so what could I do where this starts to creep in? Because we know it's a significant impact for people. We know that this can be a major problem. I really, really like reframing. I think reframing is something that we almost internally coach ourselves on all the time. Reframing is looking at the observable facts in a more positive manner. They are still the facts, but an example of a reframe could be, during lockdown, I'm locked up here, I can't go out my house. A natural reframe about that was, isn't this great to be able to spend. Sorry, I don't know why I'm starting laughing. Quality time with the family, but it is a reframe, of course. You know. So how the facts are the same. We're still locked up together in the house over lockdown, but how can we spend more quality time together than we never had before? So reframing is really, really important. So we will work with participants to think about how they can understand what reframe is. We could even get them to write some current business issues and get them to then reframe those business issues and look at them from a more positive lens. Reframing is really, really great to keep that imposter syndrome mindset in check and get them to accept, actually, isn't it good to be able to say sometimes, actually, I don't know, because you probably don't know, instead of other people say, yeah, I'm fine with that, when they're really indeed struggling with it. So that's been a little bit of a canter through, of course, and I think, you know, over lunchtime, I think an hour just right for people. And they're tucking into their tuna sandwiches. That's the program as we built it under the human-centric banner of caring, connection, and coaching, with, as I say, peer accountability sessions in between. As I mentioned at the beginning, and I might have started before you dialed in, if you have enrolled today, you should have an invite for the second one tomorrow at 12 o'clock as well. And there I'll be picking up on empathetic leadership, and I'm going to talk about trust in hybrid teams, and some stuff on building belonging, which I particularly think is really good. So I'm going to talk more about that. So it's only part of the equation, as they say. It would be remiss, of course, you're giving up your time not to talk about LHH. If you're joining us sort of for the first time and you've never really possibly come across us before, you might have seen us on LinkedIn or something, thought, oh, I'll come along and see what this is all about. Just a very quick overview. We help individuals, teams, organizations find and prepare for what's next in this very complex world that we live in. So we can support clients through the entire talent journey, from recruitment to internal career transition partnership, and also through a leadership development as well, which is what I'll lean into a little bit more. But it's about helping organizations expand their capabilities and workers to build those better futures. Leadership development is the wing I sit within. I'll just say a little bit about that as we're coming to the very end. And Joanna, there's a contact details at the end there. We'll get that. I'll get that over to you. Okay. We offer a wide range of leadership development solutions, ranging from assessments, whether you want to work on people's strengths, or for talent, or boosting interpersonal awareness. We can do all of that, of course. Easy for me to say, a wide range of interventions around DE&I, women in leadership, really popular. One of our big flagship programs there, through standalone programs on building psychological safety and inclusion, and also culture change through diagnostics and informing interventions around that. You wouldn't be surprised that we offer a suite of award-winning development programs, from first line manager all the way through to senior manager, and helping a coaching culture within organizations as well. Especially around the power of group and team coaching, we're seeing a big uptick in that at the moment. Really popular. Why? Because we've lost our villages, we've lost our connections with people. We want to get in the room and talk with people. We're seeing big uptake with that. And finally, I mentioned our team effectiveness work that we launched last year in 2023. If you have a new team or a new leader to a team struggling on aligning common goals and need to enhance team dynamics, that's where we go for that team effectiveness as well. So a full suite of interventions, as you would expect from a global company. So just a little bit about us at the end there. There we have it. You may have some questions. We're right up on the minute there for the timing. If you do, please drop us an email. We're keen to hear from you. So please do interact with us here. Mida, I wanted just to thank you for your support as well, and drop us a note and we'll come back to you if you have got any burning questions. I'm sorry I couldn't come to the hands up there, so I do apologize for that.